Hello everyone, my name is Hollis Lemons. Today I'm just going to be going into why I coach basketball, why I do the things that I do, some of the expectations, the reasons I coach, and just kind of give you an insight to my perspective of things as a freshman basketball coach. If you've listened to this podcast before, you're probably thinking, what the heck is this? I'm kind of switching things up. I used to just talk about sports, college sports, football, basketball from time to time, but I really didn't have time for that anymore because this is what I do. So I'm just going to get on here. I'm just going to talk about what I do. So like I said, my name is Hollis Lemons. I'm a freshman basketball coach at a 4A school. Um, I love it. I love being a freshman coach. I love building a foundation. I love setting the standard with these kids. I love everything about that. Um, I have a lot of people always ask me, do I want to do this forever? And I do want to be a basketball coach forever. I really do. Do I want to be a freshman basketball coach forever? Maybe not, but I really enjoy it right now, and this is what I want to do. Another reason why I'm doing this podcast is a whole bunch of my players went out and found my podcast, and they were asking me about it, and it got me kind of thinking about, I really did enjoy making these podcasts, but I just didn't really have time anymore between, teaching, coaching, having my leather work too. It's kind of didn't really have time, and then we had a snow day, so. It's been snowing for the past couple of days. It's probably going to snow for the next couple of days, so I might even do another one of these. Who knows? First things first, just to dive into this, expectations aren't only for players. I think as a coach, a lot of times we don't see. I'm not speaking for everybody, but for me, this is something I've struggled with. This is just my perspective, my opinion. If you don't agree, I'm sorry, but this is just my opinion. But I think that we don't always see that there's expectations for us too. We got to be who our players need us to be, and a lot of times that goes unnoticed. And I've coached against guys, I've coached with some guys that they're not who their players need them to be, and that means they're vocal when their players just need someone to listen, or such things as that. And I think that we have to know exactly what our players need, and the only way we can do that is by creating relationships. There's certain kids that are going to respond different ways to different styles of coaching, and that's fine. But we just have to figure out what style works best for each player and go from there. Another thing is setting clear expectations with playing time. I think a lot of times, in the midst of practice, everybody's getting playing time, everybody's playing, and there's no true expectations. So then you get to the game, and let's say you have 10 players on your team, and 7 or 8 of these dudes are really playing, and a couple of them are just kind of hanging back, not getting much playing time, sitting a lot on the bench, and they might not understand. I think it's important to set expectations with your players on why they play, why they don't play. I'm not saying you have to explain everything to your players, but I think at the start of the season you got to let them know exactly where they're at, so that they know, they have clear expectations of what it's going to be, and they don't get their heart broke on the first game. And because it's always important to win your first game, I feel like. I think it's always kind of sets a standard for how your season's going to kind of roll out. And so I want everybody to know, this year with all my freshmen, I kind of let them know exactly what my expectations were for them, whether it can be a role player, a bench player, a starter. And I'm big on tryouts. Obviously, I coach at a 4A school, so we have tryouts. And I told my kids early on, if I keep you, I plan on playing you. I'm not keeping anybody just to have them sit the bench. I want everybody to play, or else I don't want to waste your time. And so I think that's really big, and I think that's something a lot of you, especially young coaches, struggle with, because nobody really tells you how to rotate people, how to sub, when to sub, why to sub, things like that. You kind of have to just figure that out on your own. And I went from coaching a team of 7 players my first year to now having 13 on this season, and it's way different. I mean, it's 2 completely different things. And so I think playing time is something you have to set, pretty standard with your players, and let them know, hey, this is why this is happening. And if you want to change that, come talk to me about it. Come, work better in practice, work together in practice, whatever it may be. And then another thing, it's a touchy subject as coaching, especially as a young coach, because it can be intimidating, but it's parents. I've never really had issues with parents. I say that now, I probably will just because of this, but I've never really had too many issues with parents. I've always had a good relationship with my parents. I don't try to be their friend. Some people I know before I even coach their kids, and some people I have no idea until I coach their kids. And I've never really tried to be like buddy-buddy with a parent. The way that I see it is Their kid plays for me. They have no real intel in any of that. But it's great to have good parents. I do know that. I have a great set of parents this year, and they support me in everything that I do. I am a very passionate coach. I am very hard. I have strict standards. I have very strict punishments. I do all the like old school type of things, and my parents support me 100% on all of that. And so I will say I've never had very many bad parents. Obviously, I'm young and new to this, but I can tell you that having good parents is very easy. Makes things way easy. Makes it really smooth. So then kind of moving on from that, expectations and standards and playing time and parents and whatnot is why I coach. I coach not for me. Obviously, if my team wins, then I get credit for it. If my team loses, then I want to take the blame for that 100%. But it's different for everybody for every reason why they coach. I knew whenever I was in high school that I was going to be a football coach and a basketball coach. I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I've done that. And the main reason why I coach, though, is to help kids in my community, younger players that just want to better themselves, and I want to create relationships with people. I really know no stranger. I will talk to anybody at least once, and I just love building those relationships. And it kind of goes back to how your kids respond to your coaching is what kind of relationship do you have with them. I feel like every player I've ever coached could come straight up to me and say, hey coach, I need to talk to you about something, whatever it may be, whether it's playing time, something going on in their life, something happened in school, whatever it may be. I feel like I've always been that person for all of my kids. I'm a player's coach. I have strict standards. I make my kids work really hard and things like that, but I always want them to know that I care about them. I care about their well-being. I care about them as more than an athlete. I care about them as a human being first, and then an athlete comes second. But I'm always treating my kids with that utmost respect, because I demand respect, but I also give a ton of respect. And when I was in high school, I had a couple coaches. They demanded respect, and then they give none. They would always make it seem like a one-way door where you had to give respect, but you got none back as a player. And I don't ever want any of my kids to feel like that. I want all of my kids to leave from my teams knowing that I have their back. I didn't just care about them because we won a couple games here and there. My first year, I think we won like 4 or 5 games, and we lost 13 or 14 games. And I still talk to a majority of those kids still to this day. Have a good relationship with them, and it was one of the best years of my life because I was doing what I loved. And then this year, I've had had some hard conversation with some of my players from time to time, and then I felt like we've really made a connection with some of these players too, as far as being able to talk to them about hard things, being able to put them through tough situations, and just creating that relationship. But for me, it's important to know how my kids take coaching. I have certain kids that you can yell and scream at them all day, and they're never gonna back down from it. Not saying they fight back, but they just don't back down. They're kind of unbreakable spirits. They're hard workers. They just go to work. They listen to you, but you can yell and scream. You can whisper to them. It doesn't matter. They're gonna do what you want them to do. And I got some other kids that if you yell at them, it turns them off instantly. And it's just, they just quit listening as soon as you start yelling. And so I know that whenever I talk to certain players a certain way, they're going to respond a certain way. And it's crazy to think as a coach that, if I yell at a certain kid, he's not going to have some kind of response to that. Because at the end of the day, they're human beings, and we're teaching them to be, young men. And there's only so much yelling a man can take from another man before we're going to respond. And I think that's important for us to remember as coaches is at the end of the day, this isn't just about winning a basketball game for 14 to 15-year-olds. This is about, teaching a life lesson from when these guys are, 25, 30 years old, and they're having to go through life, and they're having to go through these hard situations, and they have to figure out, how do I handle myself in this situation when something doesn't go their way? How do they respond to that? And I think that's something that we have to understand. How are they going to go talk to their boss one day? They're going to ask for time off, or they're going to ask, hey, my parents are sick, my grandparents are sick, I have to go to a funeral, whatever it may be. How do they act? How do they ask their boss for that? And if I can't have an open door relationship with them, where as far as they can come talk to me about anything that they need to talk to me about, how is that setting them up for any kind of success? And so I feel like a lot of people focus on winning and losing, and that's important. I agree. If you don't win as a coach, you're not going to be in it very long. But if you have players that believe in you and they like you and they trust in you, as silly as it sounds, I'm having my players like me. 20 years ago, that's probably something that a lot of coaches didn't really talk about is, my players like me. But if your players don't trust you, they don't like you, they don't want to be around you, they're not going to play hard for you. And that's something I have to balance out is, is I want to have strict standards, I want to have strict punishments, I want to make sure that these players learn their lesson the first time, and I don't have to keep going back over this. But I also have to foster that relationship and let these guys know that I have their best interest in mind. I'm not just making them push boards for no reason. I'm not just making them run lines for no reason. Like there's a reason behind this. And I also think it's very important to explain why, the punishments are the way they are. Recently, I had to give out some pretty strict punishment to a majority of my team. And I just told them early on, I want to cut the grass short right away. I don't want to have to be coming back and trimming this thing every week. Meaning that, I was very hard from the start so that they learn their lesson. They do the right things early. They can always remember this. They don't have to come back to this, and we're not having to have constant punishments every single week and having to fight this battle. They did the punishment once. They know how bad the punishment is. They learn their lesson. We move on, and we're not worried about that anymore. But I think that especially nowadays, people just don't trust each other enough, and that's what it comes down to. Is if they don't trust you, they're not going to play for you. And I've had coaches, or I've had coaches that I didn't trust, and I didn't have great relationship with them at all. But it's because things that they did, and I felt like they weren't always consistent, whether it be punishments, playing time, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, we're all human. We're all going to make errors. Some coaches are going to, have what is called favoritisms. But I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to relationships. If I can't trust you as a coach, if you're a player and I can't trust you, I'm going to have a hard time putting you out there. And so the kids I trust the most are going to play the most. And that's something that everybody has to battle today is favoritism. There's claims of it, that this school's so political, whatever it may be, is, if you're not friends with the coach, you're not going to play, whatever. At the end of the day, I'm not friends with any of my players, and I'm not friends with any of their parents. I have good relationships with my players. I have good relationships with their parents. But at the end of the day, I don't have time for friendships like that. I don't want to be friends with the 14-year-old kid. I don't want to be friends with the 15-year-old kid. And so I don't want to be friends with their parents either, because a lot of times their parents are friends with you for one reason, and I'm smart enough to realize that. And so I don't need that. I don't have time for new friends. I don't even hang out with the friends I have. And so there's a lot of criticism that coaches catch because, you're friends with their parents, and that's why this kid plays, yada yada. And that's not true at all. But everybody, like I said, this is my opinion. This is from my perspective. If you've had a kid play sports and they've been the opposite of a favorite, they've been the guy that's just buried at the bottom of the bench, then you probably have a good reason to feel the way you feel. But at the end of the day, this is just my perspective on things. This is just me talking, just talking about my experience. I love coaching basketball. I don't want to do anything else. This is my dream job. I tell my kids all the time that I get to live the dream every single day, and they just make it better because they work hard, they play hard, they're really talented. They come to work every day just as if I was running a company. These are the type of guys I'd want to hire, and that's what I hope that I'm building them for, is to be successful after basketball, after high school. I want them to be successful young men, and that's the most important to me. So like I've said many times, kind of wrapping this thing up, is at the end of the day, we're playing a game. We're trying to teach life lessons that these young men can carry on forever, and these young women, depending on what you coach and what sport you coach or whatever it may be. I think that's all a common goal that we should be after. And I think a lot of times, as a young coach, right away, it's important to try to get your name out there, try to win a couple games, try to win some big games, whatever it may be, so that people know kind of who you are. And in a selfish way, if people don't know who you are, it's kind of hard to make that connection with people. But don't make a bad name for yourself either. Always try to make a good name for yourself. Always try to do the right things, even if it's not the popular thing. And that's kind of something I always strive to do, is try to do the right thing rather than the popular thing. And sometimes the right thing is the popular thing, and that's whenever it's fun. That's when it works out. But a lot of times the right thing is not popular, and then you'll catch some backlash from it. But you just got to keep on doing you and always be consistent. And as young coaches, it's kind of hard to find an outlet for not everybody's gone through what you've gone through or whatever it may be, and nobody really tells you exactly how to do this thing. There's really no manual on how to coach a basketball team, especially a young basketball team. And so I have TikTok, I have YouTube obviously, and I'm going to try to start reaching out to some younger coaches, get some younger coaches on this podcast, and try to get a community going of just young coaches supporting other young coaches. And so if that's something you're interested in being on the podcast, please reach out to me on TikTok. It's at the Coach Lemons, or at on YouTube here in the comment section. Just leave your TikTok handle, and I'll reach out to you. Other than that, thank you for listening. Once again, my perspective, this is just me talking about what I do on a daily basis. I'm going to continue to make these episodes like this, just short, sweet, about 15 to 20 minutes long, and I hope you all enjoy. Thank you.